It was 10 degrees Celsius on Christmas Eve. My dad locked me out in the snow for speaking back to him at dinner. I stood outside watching them open presents through the window. An hour later, a black limousine arrived. My grandmother, a billionaire, stepped out. She saw me shaking, looked at the house, and said one word, demolish. Before we go on, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's go through this story together. I didn't even have time to react before the limo doors opened. Two men in black tactical suits stepped out with the accuracy of a trained extraction team. They didn't knock. They didn't ring the bell. They walked across the frozen yard, stood on either side of me, and lifted me out of the snow like they were retrieving something valuable. My limbs were too stiff to move. The cold had passed pain and settled into a heavy numbness. They carried me a few steps and set me in the back seat. The door shut behind me, blocking the wind, the ice, and the sight of my stepsister opening the laptop meant for me. Inside, the car was silent. The air smelled like leather and clean heat. Across from me sat someone I hadn't seen in 7 years. My grandmother, Josephine. She didn't look like a grandmother, more like an executive preparing for a major takeover. Her silver hair was cut in a sharp bob, and she wore a cashmere coat that likely cost more than my failed startup. She didn't gasp or ask if I was okay. Emotion slowed things down in a crisis. Instead, she reached beside her, grabbed a heavy wool trench coat, and placed it over me. It hit my shoulders like armor. "Put your arms through," she said, her voice calm and direct. "Hypothermia is a dull way to die, Arya." I struggled with the sleeves while my teeth chattered. The heat from the wool stung as my skin warmed. I glanced through the tinted window and saw my father, Gregory, standing inside, raising a glass of wine. He looked like someone pleased with himself. He had no idea his comfort was about to shift. I only said the turkey was dry," I managed. Josephine kept watching the house. "You think this is about turkey? You think you're out here because of one comment?" She finally turned toward me, her expression sharp. This was where she broke things down without softness. He didn't lock you out for disrespect. He locked you out because he felt small. Look. She motioned to the window where Gregory was laughing with his new wife. "That is a man with a fragile ego. Weak people only feel strong when someone else is struggling. Your shivering makes him feel powerful. This isn't punishment, Arya. It's reinforcement." The truth hit harder than the cold. I had spent months believing I was the issue, that failing in my business made me difficult to love, that if I stayed quiet and agreeable, I could earn my place again. Josephine was changing the framework. I wasn't a bad daughter. I was a source of validation for someone who needed control. "He thinks he's teaching me a lesson," I whispered as the realization settled in. "He is," Josephine said, pressing the intercom, "but he's about to learn one too." She pressed a button. "Driver, cut the power to the main house." I watched the mansion lights flicker and go dark. The tree went off. My father's posture froze. Inside the limo, the only light came from the dashboard's blue glow on Josephine's face. She wasn't smiling. This wasn't entertainment. It was correction. "Warm up," she said. "We're not leaving yet. I want him to see the car. I want him to understand the move has already been made." I sat in the warm seat, the wool coat finally easing the deep chill, and watched the house. Without lights, it looked less like a home and more like a shell. You might wonder why I returned. Why, after my startup collapsed and left me broke and discouraged, I went back to the place that always diminished me. The reason wasn't emotional, it was financial. I had invested everything into an algorithm that was ahead of the market, but I ran out of time before it could succeed. Bankruptcy wasn't just paperwork, it was what sent me back to Aspen. For 3 months, the price of staying under Gregory's roof was my self-respect. It wasn't one dramatic event, it was a daily cost. Staying silent when Patricia criticized my failures. Listening while Gregory lectured me about real business using money he didn't earn. Accepting comments from Reese, my stepsister, as if I were a guest in my childhood home. I looked at my hands, still red but no longer shaking. "I didn't think he'd really do it," I said. "I thought he was bluffing." Josephine kept her eyes on the house. "That's the pattern, isn't it? Cruelty becomes routine. It never starts with locking you out in a storm. If it had, you would have left immediately. It starts small, jokes at your expense, interrupting you, making you wait, lowering the temperature 1 degree at a time until you don't realize how cold it's become. She was right. I had spent months adjusting to their tone, believing that if I absorbed the criticism and stayed pleasant, I would be welcomed back. I thought it was resilience. Now I saw it was conditioning. I accepted crumbs, I said, embarrassed. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd forgive me for losing. You didn't fail, Josephine said, her voice cutting through my doubt. You attempted something challenging. They've never attempted anything. They only take. People like that dislike anyone who tries to grow. She tapped the center screen. A live feed appeared from the house cameras. The generator hadn't started. I saw them in the living room, lit by the fireplace and their phones. They weren't worried. They weren't checking if I was outside. They were irritated. Look at them, Josephine said as I watched. The celebration mood had shifted to frustration. Patricia was waving her hands, her outline sharp against the firelight. I didn't need sound to know she was complaining about the inconvenience. The power outage disrupted her carefully planned party setup. Then I noticed Reese on the sofa holding a silver-wrapped box. My box, the one I had wrapped for myself, containing the last high-performance laptop I owned, salvaged from my company's liquidation. I had brought it to the living room to work after dinner and continue restoring a file. She opened the lid. Even through the grainy security feed night vision, I could see her smiling. She said something to Gregory while laughing, and he nodded, pouring another drink in the dark. He wasn't concerned about his daughter outside in the snow. He was allowing his stepdaughter to go through my belongings. She's taking my laptop, I said plainly. It has my code, my intellectual property. She's taking it because she assumes I'm no longer here. Josephine replied that in their minds, I already didn't exist. She added that Patricia was likely telling Reese that I was simply upset, pretending I had left to prove a point. She was convincing her that my situation was exaggerated for effect. I watched Gregory raise his glass again. He seemed relaxed, confident, as if he controlled everything around him. He thinks the darkness is just a random outage, I said. He thinks he's the only one who can shut things down. Josephine corrected me, saying he was about to realize he didn't control anything. She picked up a sleek black phone from the console. She didn't dial. She spoke one command: execute phase 2, enter the premises. The car doors locked with a firm mechanical click. Outside, the 2 security agents who had retrieved me began walking toward the front door. They didn't look like visitors. They moved with a purpose. Ready? Josephine asked, finally looking at me. Her expression was firm, but there was also an invitation in it. I don't have anything, I said, looking at the borrowed coat. No keys, no money. They have everything. Josephine gave a thin, controlled smile. You have the deed, Arya. You just don't realize it yet. Let's introduce your father to his actual landlord. The front door didn't simply open. It gave way. My grandmother didn't knock. She entered the estate as though the locks recognized their rightful owner. The storm pushed in behind her, sending cold air and snow across the foyer and eliminating the warmth from the fireplace almost immediately. I followed behind her with the security team, feeling like I was re-entering a place I no longer belonged to. My coat was heavy, my body still warming up, but my thoughts were clear. The scene ahead looked like a moment frozen in place. The generator had finally engaged, casting a harsh yellow glow. Gregory was mid-laugh, holding a glass of scotch in a raised hand. Patricia was admiring a bracelet. Reese was typing on my laptop. All of them stopped. The room fell silent. Mother, Gregory said, his voice unsteady. He lowered his glass, spilling some onto the rug. He blinked as if trying to process what he was seeing. We didn't expect you. The roads are closed. Josephine didn't acknowledge him. She walked to the center of the room, her heels sounding precise on the floor. She didn't remove her coat or smile. She looked at the decorations, gifts, and food with the calm evaluation of someone inspecting a space before shutting it down. Turn off the music, she said. It wasn't optional. Reese quickly searched for the remote, and the music stopped. Gregory stepped forward, shifting into the persona he used with investors. Calm, agreeable, misleading. Josephine, really? You startled us. We were having a quiet family night. Patricia, bring my mother a drink. She must be cold. Josephine responded evenly. I'm not cold, Gregory, but Arya was. She moved aside, revealing me standing behind her. I saw the reaction on Patricia's face, and Reese attempted to hide my laptop with a pillow. Gregory didn't appear guilty. He looked irritated, as if his plan had been interrupted. "Arya," he said, annoyed. "You ran to your grandmother. Always the victim. I told you, Mother. She was emotional. She left because I gave her constructive feedback on her business. I was going to check on her." "You were pouring a scotch," I replied. My voice was rough but controlled. "And you locked the deadbolt." Gregory dismissed it with a wave. "The house is drafty. We were protecting the pipes." Josephine turned to the man standing beside her. I hadn't realized he was in the limo, but he had entered quietly. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. This was Mr. Vance, the family's attorney. "Is the timeline confirmed?" Josephine asked. "Yes," Vance said. "We have gate logs, thermal imaging, and the lockout timestamp, at least 45 minutes of exposure. In many places, that would be considered attempted manslaughter," he explained. "In this family," he added, "it was a breach of contract." Gregory laughed nervously. "Contract? What are you talking about? This is my house. I discipline my daughter how I see fit." Josephine said he was mistaken. Vance placed the briefcase on the table, snapping open the latches. Josephine spoke plainly. "You don't own this house, Gregory. You never did." Gregory tried to push back. "I have the deed. You signed it to me years ago. It's in the safe." Josephine corrected him, explaining that he had a document she allowed him to keep. But the real deed was executed 26 years earlier. She pulled a single document from the briefcase and set it on the table. "Read the beneficiary line," she said. Gregory picked it up, hands shaking. I watched him read and quietly reach the unavoidable conclusion. "This says," he began, struggling. Josephine stated that the estate, land, and company were placed in a blind trust, designated to pass to the first female heir on her 26th birthday. She turned to me. "Happy birthday, Arya." I looked at Gregory. He was no longer focused on the document. He was focused on me. For the first time, I no longer saw him as the person who controlled my decisions and self-worth. I saw someone without authority here. "You knew," he said, anger returning. "You planned this." "I knew nothing," I replied. "I thought I was broke. I thought I had nowhere to go." "You do," Patricia said sharply, standing. "This is absurd, Josephine. You can't hand everything to her. She's a failure." She said Arya ruined her own company and couldn't manage an estate. Josephine responded in a steady tone that the company wasn't ruined by Arya. It was undermined. They had traced the short selling of her stock. Patricia was told that Gregory used his influence to unsettle Arya's investors, so she would feel forced to return home. He needed her under his control because he knew this moment would eventually arrive. Josephine stepped closer to her son and told him he weakened Arya so he could offer support, then remove that support when it suited him. "I raised her," Gregory argued, striking the table. "I provided everything. This is my home." "It is not," Mr. Vance said, uninterested but firm. "Legally, as of midnight, you are trespassing." Gregory's face darkened. "I am her father." "Biologically, yes," I said as I stepped forward. I walked to Reese, who leaned back into the cushions and took my laptop from her hands. She didn't protest. "But legally, you are only a liability tied to this estate." I looked at the document on the table. My name was printed clearly. It represented more than a property. It was stability, the resources to restart, and the leverage to end his control. "What would you like to do, Miss Harrison?" Vance asked. He directed the question at me, not Josephine. The transfer of authority was complete. I looked at Gregory. He was breathing hard, sweating, assessing the room for any excuse or argument. He looked at me as if preparing to plead. He was ready to rely on family language, loyalty, connection, all the things he disregarded earlier. "I want him out," I said. "Now?" Vance asked. Patricia objected, saying the storm was worsening and they couldn't be put out in such conditions. I looked toward the same window where I had stood earlier and at the coat Josephine had placed on me. "I don't want them out tomorrow," I said quietly, though the words carried through the room. "I want them out now, and they leave behind everything. They walk out with only what they're wearing." Josephine gave a small, approving smile. "You heard the owner," she instructed the security team. "Clear the building." Gregory reached toward me. "Arya, wait. We are family. You can't do this. I was trying to shape you, to make you stronger." "You did," I said. The guard stepped in. It wasn't a gentle exit, it was a direct removal. They took Gregory by his jacket as he resisted, pushing against furniture as they moved him toward the door. Patricia protested loudly, holding her jewelry. Reese followed them out, looking at me with a mix of fear and disbelief. The front door opened and the wind rushed in. I watched Gregory be moved into the snow. He fell to his knees where I had stood earlier. He turned toward the house and the heat inside. "Arya," he shouted, "open the door." I walked to the window and set my hand against the cold surface. I met his eyes and then reached for the curtain cord. "Demolish," I said. I pulled it and the curtains closed, shutting out the view and keeping the warmth inside while leaving him in the conditions he had created for me. The room went still. The only sound was the fire and Mr. Vance's pen as he completed the remaining documents. Josephine moved to the bar and poured a drink. "That is how you manage a hostile takeover," she said. She handed me the glass. "Welcome home, Arya." If you've ever had to endure the cold to regain your strength, subscribe and share this with someone who should hear it. You are not the outcast. You are the survivor still waiting for recognition.